Welcome to our deep dive into the 6 main organs of the United Nations. Now, I know what you're thinking. Organs? Is this some sort of bizarre Cronenbergian nightmare where the UN building is a pulsating, fleshy hellscape? And to that I say, no, calm down. This is far less interesting than that. We're talking about the 6 principal bodies of the UN, each with a specific function, like parts of a very complicated, occasionally frustrating, but ultimately well-meaning body. Except instead of pumping blood or digesting food, these organs are tasked with the Herculean task of maintaining global peace and cooperation. Over the next little while, we're going to unpack each of these organs, exploring their history, their purpose, and maybe, just maybe, uncover a few of the more absurd stories they've accumulated along the way. Because if we're being honest, an organization this big dealing with issues this complex, there are bound to be a few head-scratchers. Buckle up. First up, we have the big cheese, the head honcho, the organ that everyone pretends to respect while secretly fantasizing about stapling things to the Security Council. This is the body with the power to authorize military action, impose sanctions, and essentially tell countries to knock it off when they're acting up. Think of them as the world's hall monitor. Only instead of a reflective vest and a whistle, they have warships and the threat of economic ruin.
Now, the Security Council is made up of 15 members, but the real power lies with the 5 permanent members, also known as the P5. These 5, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia and China, hold veto power, meaning any one of them can single-handedly block a resolution. It's like giving your most chaotic friend veto power over your group chat. Sure, it might prevent disaster sometimes, but it also guarantees a healthy dose of gridlock and frustration.
And boy, oh boy, has there been gridlock. The Security Council has been the stage for some of the most tense standoffs in history, from the Cuban Missile Crisis to the Syrian civil war. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. The Security Council has also had its share of successes, intervening in conflicts, providing humanitarian aid, and occasionally even managing to get its act together long enough to pass a resolution that everyone can agree on. It's a low bar, but this is international diplomacy, people. Next, we have the General Assembly, which is like the UN's town hall meeting. Except instead of arguing over potholes and noise complaints, they're discussing things like global pandemics, climate change, and whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza. Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
This is where all 193 UN member states get a seat at the table and a chance to voice their opinions. And unlike the Security Council, there's no veto power here, meaning every country gets one vote, regardless of size, wealth, or military might. It's a beautiful thing, really, like watching a herd of elephants attempt synchronized swimming. Chaotic, endearing, and ultimately pointless.
Because while the General Assembly can pass resolutions and make recommendations, these aren't legally binding. It's more like a strongly worded suggestion, which, let's be honest, is about as effective as a strongly worded letter to your internet provider asking them to fix your Wi-Fi. But that doesn't mean the General Assembly is useless.
It provides a vital platform for debate, diplomacy, and the occasional diplomatic shouting match. It's a place where countries can air their grievances, form alliances, and try to shame each other into behaving. Plus, it's where the UN budget is approved, which, if we're being honest, is probably the most exciting thing that happens there. Because who doesn't love a good budget debate? It's like watching paint dry, but with more numbers and the potential for a diplomatic incident.
Now, let's talk about the Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC for short, because apparently even the UN has succumbed to the siren song of acronyms. Don't worry, it's far less catchy than YOLO or FOMO.
This organ is all about the people. Well, not people, people. More like the betterment of humanity in a general, non-specific way. ECOSOC is responsible for promoting economic and social development, human rights, and international cooperation on a whole host of issues. Think of them as the UN's social work department. Only instead of dealing with individual cases, they're trying to tackle poverty, inequality, and climate change on a global scale.
It's a tall order, to be sure, and one that ECOSOC often struggles to fulfill, but they keep at it, churning out reports, organizing conferences, and trying to convince wealthy nations to share their wealth. It's a thankless job, but someone's got to do it.
And to be fair, ECOSOC has made some progress. They've helped to eradicate diseases, improve education, and promote gender equality. They're like that one friend who's always organizing charity events and volunteering at soup kitchens. You might not always see the results of their work, but you know they're making a difference.
Now, you can't have a well-functioning organization without a dedicated staff, and that's where the Secretariat comes in. This is the UN's administrative backbone, the tireless workers who keep the lights on and the wheels turning.
Led by the Secretary General, a position currently held by Antonio Guterres, the Secretariat is made up of thousands of international civil servants, working behind the scenes to translate documents, organize conferences, and generally keep the UN from collapsing in on itself.
They are the unsung heroes of the UN, the ones who do the grunt work, so that the Security Council can bicker and the General Assembly can issue strongly worded statements. Imagine them as the stage crew of a massive Broadway production, except instead of elaborate sets and dazzling costumes, they're dealing with diplomatic protocols and mountains of paperwork.
But don't let their bureaucratic exterior fool you. The Secretariat is full of incredibly talented and dedicated individuals working tirelessly to make the world a better place. They may not be the ones making headlines, but they're the ones making sure the UN actually functions.
Think about that the next time you see a picture of a UN summit. Behind those perfectly posed world leaders are dozens of Secretariat staff, whispering frantically into headsets and trying to prevent an international incident. Now, if you're a fan of legal dramas, then you'll love the International Court of Justice, also known as the ICJ or the World Court. This is the UN's judicial arm, tasked with settling disputes between states and offering advisory opinions on matters of international law.
Think of it as Judge Judy, but instead of squabbling neighbors and petty theft, you have sovereign nations arguing over maritime boundaries and war crimes. The stakes are higher, the legal arguments are denser, and the robes are probably fancier.
The ICJ is made up of 15 judges, elected to 9-year terms by the General Assembly and the Security Council. These judges come from all over the world, bringing with them a diverse range of legal perspectives, and one can only assume, an impressive collection of gavels.
Now here's the catch. The ICJ can only hear cases between states that have agreed to its jurisdiction. This means that if one country decides they don't want to play by the rules, they can simply refuse to participate. It's like trying to mediate a fight between two toddlers, only one of them is armed with a juice box, and a complete disregard for international law.
But when countries do agree to participate, the ICJ can play a vital role in resolving disputes peacefully. It's not always pretty and the decisions aren't always popular, but it's a hell of a lot better than the alternative. Finally, we come to the Trusteeship Council, the UN organ that's a bit like that one friend who peaked in high school and now spends most of their time reminiscing about the good old days. You see, the Trusteeship Council was created after World War II to help oversee the transition of former colonies to independence. It was a noble goal, and for a while the Trusteeship Council was pretty busy, helping to guide dozens of territories towards self-governance. But as more and more colonies gained independence, the Trusteeship Council's workload began to dwindle. By the 1990s, it was down to just one remaining territory: Palau, a tiny island nation in the Pacific Ocean. And in 1994, Palau gained its independence, leaving the Trusteeship Council without a purpose. But instead of just disbanding, the Trusteeship Council decided to do what any self-respecting bureaucratic body would do. They kept the lights on and waited for someone to notice they weren't actually doing anything. Today, the Trusteeship Council exists in a sort of bureaucratic limbo, its chambers gathering dust, its members long since moved on to other things. It's a poignant reminder that even in the fast-paced world of international diplomacy, sometimes the best course of action is to simply do nothing. And there you have it, the 6 main organs of the United Nations. Each plays a crucial role in maintaining international peace, security, and cooperation. They may not always get it right, and they may move at the pace of a sedated sloth, but they're a testament to the idea that cooperation, however messy and frustrating, is still our best hope for a better future. So the next time you hear someone complaining about the UN, remind them that it's easy to criticize from the sidelines. It's much harder to step into the ring and try to make a difference in a world that often seems determined to tear itself apart. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content.